What's up guys, Justin from FixMyPEV, and today I'm going to be showing you how to do something that has been requested of me so many times I lost count, and that is how to modify the firmware on your Onewheel. And I'm just going to give you a couple of disclaimers about this. There was a previous web app that was developed by a number of amazing people in our Onewheel community, and they actually gave us the ability to modify the firmware on the Onewheel GT as well as the Onewheel Pint. This does not cover the Pint X, it does not cover the XR, it does not cover the Plus, it does not cover the V1. It is specifically for the GT and the original or OG Pint. So that's just a quick note. A couple of other notes in the form of disclaimers here. The project that I am going to be using today is actually a clone of the project or web app that has been previously removed from the internet. That was removed from the internet due to a DMCA claim from Future Motion toward the developers of the original app. Although they did feel they were doing things in a legal manner, it was something that obviously was not going to be worth the risk or worth the trouble to just leave up on the internet and face potential legal ramifications, especially seeing as how these people were just independent developers in our community trying to do something nice and cool for the rest of us. They don't stand a chance against corporate lawyers. So, moving past that, the clone that I'm going to be using today, I will not be naming the previous project, I will not be naming this current project, but you'll be able to see it on the screen. This is not associated with FixMyPEV in any way, shape, or form. I do have pretty extensive knowledge of how to use the program or use the app because I used the previous one and I've also used the clone. But I have no association, myself, my business, or anybody else who is involved with FixMyPEV have no association or any type of attachment to this clone or to the original project other than having the knowledge. So that's why we're here today. We want to share it with you guys. We want to give you the ability to do this yourselves, and we will show you exactly how to do that. So there's a couple of things that we need to do to make sure that we're ready for this. Number one, make sure that you have a web Bluetooth compatible browser. Google Chrome is the #1 option that I recommend. It can be downloaded on almost any device that you have. Keep in mind this will work on Mac, this will work on PC, this will likely work with Linux, and it will also work with Android. It does not work with the iPhone or the iPad as far as I know. There could be a way, there's probably some really smart people out there who could get it to work, but at this time I am not aware of any solutions for that. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I am going to jump into the process here. So you can see that I have the board also on the screen. That way you can see exactly what happens. You do want to make sure it's on. As you can see, the light bar is on, and that's how you're going to be able to tell that it's on. You also want to make sure that it's in its normal resting position. This is going to be nose up, very similar to if you were about to mount your board during a ride. So it's just in its normal resting position. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up the cloned web app. You're going to see the URL here, https://autumn-bar-0505.on.fleek.co. Ready? Break. I feel like I just called a play. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and hit enter, and you will land on the home page of this web app. You can read this if you'd like. I do recommend reading a number of things as you go through the process, but I've done this so many times that I'm not really going to stop and go through all of that. However, just because I'm skipping it doesn't mean you should. Anyway, first thing you're going to want to do here is you're going to want to go to the Resources tab. From the Resources tab, the very first thing you want to do is go ahead and click on the OTA files for Pint, GT, and firmware. We're not going to need all of these files, but we need to go ahead and download this zip file. So we should have these files here. We don't really care about these signed extractors. We're not going to need those today. However, we will be using the 6109 for the GT. And then if you're going to do a Pint, you would use 5040. Just keep in mind, 6109 is for GT, 5040 is for the Pint. So now that we have downloaded those, I can go ahead and close that extra tab that opened up. And this is a tip for you guys. This is one of the main reasons I stress so strongly that FixMyPEV is not associated with any of these projects, is because we actually wrote a guide for the previous web app before it was pulled from the internet. We no longer have it publicly listed on our website, however, it is still publicly accessible. So if you want to go ahead and click on this and take a look at the steps, you will notice there's a couple differences. Like step 1 here, you don't need to go to the old app address because it is no longer available. So don't bother with that. I did not update this because I'm not really interested in trying to keep up with any of the clones or anything like that. However, the process is the exact same with, I think, one minor change to one of the steps, and I'll go through that in the video. So if you want to pull this guide up, you want to look through it, you'll actually get a lot of helpful information starting beyond step 1. You'll start at step 2, and then I believe there's one other one here, and I'll go over it a little bit more once we get to that point. But step 11, there is no extras tab. We're going to see here it's actually going to be the extract key tab. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the process here. The first step on that guide is going to tell you to go to the backup tab. And in this case, you're going to go ahead and click on the button for the board that you have. In my case, I have a GT. If you have a Pint, click Pint. I'm going to go ahead and connect. I need to allow this to use the Bluetooth, and I can see my board there. I'm going to click on that and click pair. Something I like to do just as a precaution is I like to go ahead and refresh. If you're on a PC, you can do F5, Mac, you can do Command R, or you can just hit that little circle right there, or you can even just go back in the address bar and hit enter. I'm going to repeat the process I just did, and I'm going to click connect. The reason I want to do this is because I want to make sure it says paired here. This is just a precautionary thing. I don't know if it's necessary, but I like to do it because you don't want to play games when you're doing this process. Things can get messed up. If you follow exactly what I'm saying though, I will guarantee you that things will not get messed up. So I'm going to click pair. And we are going to click flash extractor. This is a process I recommend doing every single time you modify the firmware on your board, and that's because we're going to be taking a backup copy of the settings on our board. The settings include the mileage, and the mileage, if you ride your board for 500 miles and decide to do this again and happen to ever have to back up from that file, it's going to set you back 500 miles. Now, the backup is only in case of an emergency. That would be if somebody's board bricked or something like that. So take it lightly, ultimately, but I still do recommend creating this file every single time. There's no reason to skip it. So you're going to get your warning. Please read this. I've read it multiple times, so I'm going to go ahead and click. I'm going to click Start Update. Another warning. Again, please read it. I'm going to click Flash Update, and we're probably going to see here that it's going to not work the first time. So let's just see. Watch that light bar. All right, so if you get a flashing light, then it did not work. And we can see that we have an update error on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and retry the update. Flash update. And we have another error. If it doesn't work, go ahead and power cycle the board. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. All right, so it's going to make me connect again. I'm very used to it not working the first time, so I usually power cycle it after it fails the first time. Connect, paired, pair, flash extractor, understand the risks, start update, read the warning, flash update. And now we can see that our percentage bar is increasing. You can see the light bar is also yellow, and that will illuminate fully yellow as the percentage gets to 100. Keep in mind, after this happens, we want to give it about 5 to 10 seconds before we push any other buttons, and that's about to happen here. So we're waiting, it's still yellow, and now it is solid again. Now that it's solid again, I feel comfortable clicking the next button here. If it's still yellow, do not hit the button because it will fail and you'll have to start over. So we have a solid light. I'm ready to go ahead and click the dump bootloader button. And we have another percentage bar. This will take longer than any of the other processes here. It's not crazy long. You can see it's already at 10%. But just make sure that you keep your computer or your Android phone or whatever you're using as close to the board as possible while you're doing this. And I also recommend not doing anything else that uses Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or anything crazy. Like, I don't want to get too ridiculous, but just try not to interfere with the process in any way. Don't stand in between the board and the computer. Don't microwave popcorn right next to the board and computer. Don't try to communicate with UFOs right next to the board and computer. I think you guys get it by now. Anyway, we're just going to let this finish up here, and then I'll tell you what to do next. All right, so now that that process completed, that is only the first step here on the backup tab. I am going to now click dump settings, and this is going to go a lot quicker. You see it pretty much just flashed. And then the next thing you want to do is do not click reboot. Click download, because we need to download our backup file. This is going to include the information I mentioned earlier, the mileage, the settings, all that good stuff. And we're actually going to need to reference this file later. So if it's in your downloads folder or wherever you put it, make sure you can reference it later. Now that I've downloaded it, I'm going to go ahead and click reboot. You might notice that the GT will reboot itself for us, and it should be flashing after this. The Pint does not reboot itself, and also, as a result, I would recommend power cycling your board, whether it is a Pint or GT, just to be safe. When we power cycle the GT, it's going to flash again. When you power cycle the Pint, it's going to flash like this as well. But I recommend power cycling just to be safe. You will hear me say that quite a bit throughout this process. So now that we have our backup, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to extract the key. And this is where I said if you're following the guide, step 11 says navigate to the extras tab. We already went through all these other processes. You can see that we just rebooted, but we're going to go to the extract key tab instead of the extras tab, which was in the original web app. And we're going to do the same thing here that it would tell us to do there. We're going to go to key extractor. We're going to choose the file. I'm going to go to my downloads, and I'm going to select the file that I just created. And I'm going to click extract key. So I'm going to have these values covered up because these are private. This is Future Motion's proprietary information, so I'm not going to be sharing it with all of you guys. If you're doing this process with your own board, you will have access to this yourself. So once it comes up, make sure to go ahead and press save key, and then you're ready to go to the next step. So the next step that we're going to do is we're going to go to the patch tab. We're going to select some firmware, and at this point we want to go ahead and select the firmware file for the board that we are working with. In this case it's a GT, so it's 6109. Again, if you're doing a Pint, it is 5040. Do not mix those up. And this is where we get our list of patches. I like to refer to this as the menu. This is like, what do I want to eat today? What do I want to add to my board today? I happen to be the type of person who wants to do patches that do not completely change the style of my board. So I will not be doing anything like custom shaping or remote tilt or spoof board as XR or anything like that. So I'm going to skip over that. You can read the little info under each of these just to see kind of what it's supposed to do. If you have any questions about those, you can always ask me or ask around. There's a lot of people who have played around with these. I do like to do the remove BLE handshake check, because then I can connect to this with apps like Onewheel Community Edition or Float Remote without having to open the Onewheel app. That's just something I like for convenience. I am going to set my top speed as well. Do not copy me. You can see all the default values. I have been riding for 4 years now, and I know the limitations of my board, so I'm actually going to max this out. And I'm doing this not because I want to exceed the speeds that I should, but because I know that there's only a certain speed, basically an area that I will get to, and I will not exceed. But I just don't want pushback at that point. So I'm bumping this all the way up to the max. If you want to be a bit more reserved or a bit more safe, then I'd suggest doing something lower. You can see the GT default is 1720. Play around with it, but please be safe. I'm not making any recommendations of your values that you should set here specifically, so do so at your own risk. I will not be doing remote tilt. Remove BMS out of band communication. This is one that I don't believe is working. It's supposed to eliminate the issue where you get the error 24, and I believe that's the corrupted memory error. It doesn't do exactly what it's supposed to do, so I still check it just out of habit, but just keep in mind that that error will still come up if you disconnect your battery. However, there is a way to fix that, of course, and it's not here in these patches, so I'm going to move past that. Posi sensor when mounting. I do love this one. For the Pint, if you want about a 2-second delay, you're going to want to set it to 3000. Again, I'm not making a recommendation specifically, but that is the default. That's what I have on my own personal Pint, and it's great. For a GT, however, the GT processes that action a lot quicker than the Pint does. So to achieve something similar to 3000, you actually have to put in 20,000. Sounds crazy, but this will give you about a 2-second delay before your foot pad reverts to a dual zone sensor. That's exactly what this is for. This eliminates false starts. I have it on my own board. It's a digital alternative to something like the Sure Start. It doesn't do exactly what the Sure Start does, but it does enough for me. So, rescale state of charge, not going to do that. That's if you're getting a higher capacity battery, like a TLGT or a CBGT. You can look those up. Boost custom shaping, since I didn't do the standard custom shaping, I'm not going to touch that either. The next thing we want to make sure is encrypt firmware. We want that to be selected, and it should be by default, so don't touch it. Go ahead and click apply patches. You can see it's kind of hidden here. It says applied 4 patches. Now scroll down a little bit, because you can't see the download button unless you scroll down. That wasn't there before, so now we can scroll down and then click download. So we're actually ready to go to the next step, and just for the sake of looking at the guide, select the desired patches, click download, navigate to the flash tab. Before we do that, I'm going to do something else that I like to do. I'm going to go ahead and click on flash, but I like to power cycle my board again one more time. And the reason I say this is because sometimes it takes a while to do your patches, especially if it's your first time. And the board does have an auto shut off. I believe it's somewhere around 15 minutes. So we don't want this to shut off at a time where we're not wanting it to shut off, primarily during the flashing process. So I have, and when I say flashing process, I don't mean that this light is the flashing process. It's flashing the firmware process. So this isn't going to shut off on us. We're going to click flash again. I'm already on the flash tab. I'm going to click connect because it disconnected when I power cycled. I'm going to click pair. I'm going to choose the file, and this time I am going to choose the file that I just created. It's going to be in my downloads folder. It's going to be, let me show you the full name here, unless you change the name. In my case, encrypted FW6109-patched.bin. If you did 5040, it's going to say encrypted FW5040-patched.bin. If you do multiple patches and you're trying different things out, feel free to rename this file to something that maybe you have BLE, top, and Posi, or whatever you want to do. Just help yourselves out. Keep these things in a safe place. Keep them named in a way that makes sense to you, and you should be good to go. These files can be used on multiple boards. This is a patch file that I've set up for myself based on my preferred settings. You can make yours, and you can absolutely share them with people who also have access to the app, as well as their own extracted bootloader settings files. Do not share those. That's where you get in trouble. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my patched file. I'm going to click Start Update. Read the warning. I've already read this a million times. You guys please read it. And then I'm going to click Flash Update, and you'll see the light bar change. So we are back to updating. This might take roughly the amount of time that it took us to dump the bootloader. It might even take a little bit longer. I know I said that that process prior was the longest process that we would go through. I may have misspoke. However, it is a good idea to note that the process here that we're doing in flashing is the most sensitive in this entire process. Do not interrupt it. Do not power off your board. Do not power off your computer. It's okay, I believe, if you don't have an internet connection at this time. Obviously, to get to this page, I needed the internet, but during the process, I'm not sure if you still need the internet if the page is already loaded. But don't interrupt your internet either, if you can help it. So, all the precautions. Definitely take all the precautions. Don't let your little brother or little sister run across your keyboard while this is going on. Don't let your dog pee on your keyboard while this is going on. Don't spill your root beer from your Pizza Friday or your IPA from your football Sunday party, whatever you're doing. Just be careful is all I'm trying to say. So we'll let this process finish, and then I will catch up with you guys as soon as that's done. All right, so it's almost done here. Once it finishes, it's going to actually power cycle the board for us. And the board is now on. Now I say that it power cycles for us, but just as a precaution, again, I'm going to power cycle it myself. Make sure that this light is white before you do that. If it's any other color, do not touch your power button. Mine is white, mine is solid. I'm going to power cycle. All right, and if you did something like the Pawsy patch, you will actually be able to test your board right here, right now. If I touch one side, we should get a full blue light bar, which we do. And that should happen whether I touch it on the left side or the right side. It does not matter. So that's all there is to it. If you didn't do the Pawsy patch, go ahead and give your board a test. Take it outside. Put your helmet on, please, for the love of God. I am tired of hearing about injuries and unfortunate deaths. It is just something that is completely avoidable when it comes to stuff like putting a helmet on. So I just want to thank you guys for your time, for your support. I am constantly building out FixMyPEV, and I just want to make sure that I can provide you guys with as much information as possible. If you want to contribute to me, I actually have a contributor page. You can find it at the top of the guide that I wrote. It is just fixmypev.com/contributors/Justin-Velasquez. A little bit of information about me. You can buy me a coffee, keep me alive, buy me a couple burritos, whatever you want to buy me. I really will be appreciative. But I'm doing this for you guys. I'm doing this for our community, and I am happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thanks. Ride safe.